You may not have noticed it, but Dave Aranda has built a top 20 transfer portal class in all of college football.
You are Locked On Baylor, your daily podcast on the Baylor Bears. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, Bears fans. Welcome to another episode of Locked On Baylor. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, where you can win $200 in bonus bets if that first $5 bet wins. I'm your host, Cam Stuart of ESPN Central Texas and the Cam Show on YouTube. Alongside, even when we go down to 3 days a week, she's still here on a Wicker Wednesday, KCEN's own, Channel 6's own, Sydney Wicker. We will be talking about the Bears' surprising top 20 transfer portal class and who we're most excited about in that class, plus some big-time comments from Kenny Dillingham. Arizona State becoming the next Clemson, or could that be someone else within the Big 12? And speaking of the Big 12, pretty glad that we don't have our home games on the CW, but unfortunately, Baylor has one of those. Is that one of the most embarrassing things in college football? We'll talk about all that and more on this episode of Locked On Baylor. Once again, joining me on this Wicker Wednesday, Sydney Wicker. Sydney, did you realize, because I'm going to admit I didn't realize until a few days ago, that Baylor had a top 20 transfer portal recruiting class this year?
I didn't realize it was that high. We've talked so much about just how good this recruiting class was and the moves Baylor was making, but for it to be top 20 took me by surprise.
Yeah, it was kind of like you put it there. Like we've been talking about how good it was, and I've kind of been like trying to ignore the rankings almost. I'm like, look, Tech is going to be top 2 or 3, and that's great. In fact, I've done episodes about like, look, Tech has been fantastic at it, but like Baylor brings a lot of guys back, and they're finding the right kind of positions to plug. And then all of a sudden I look, and on 3, they're number 18 in the country, making them number 2 in all of the Big 12 for these transfer portal rankings. And with how prevalent that is in today's college football, we saw Baylor actually really benefit from it last year as well, going through the portal. Guys like, within the last year and a half, Sawyer Robertson, Michael Trigg, Keaton Thomas, some of these guys that were plug-and-play starters for last year's team. But how important in today's college football, Sydney, is it that you not just have a strong recruiting class, but that you are able to turn over a couple of starters every year through the transfer portal?
I mean, that's how you build a dynasty or in really good programs. Like, you got to be able to have a good turnover, and it helps when you can bring in veteran guys. Like, you always want a good recruiting class, but who do they learn from? Who are the leaders on your team? And sometimes you got to add a few key new voices. Like, everybody loves the good walk-on story here and there, but a lot of times those guys aren't the leaders right away, and you need those voices pretty quickly in your program. So it's huge.
Yeah, and there's kind of like almost a fine line there of like you need some continuity, right? Like you need depth, you need guys who have been in the program for a couple of years, but in a weird way, it's kind of like what Scott Drew's faced with. We say we don't want any more one and done guys, but then Scott Drew's like, so should I stop recruiting the best players in the country? It's like, yeah, you need more continuity in the football program. It's like, okay, but I can get a starter right there. Like, I know this guy can play at this level. I've seen it. It's on tape. He's done it. And it probably a safer bet than the guy I have in the pipeline right now. So I think Baylor's actually struck a really nice balance with that. They haven't been Baylor of 3 years ago that gets nobody, and they're not Colorado turning over their entire roster. I think they found a good medium there, and now the rankings are showing that. So, Sydney, as we now look out on a top 20 transfer portal recruiting class for a pretty well-stocked team in the 2025 Baylor Bears, who's jumping out at you? That's what I want to know. Like, who's the player on this list that you're like, I really can't wait for him to take the field this year?
Yeah, it was kind of hard for me to pick one. Can I do two?
Yeah, okay. Fine. I'll let you do two. Yeah.
I think the guy who just like first and foremost I'm probably most excited about is the Alabama guy, Prentice. Mm-hmm. He's somebody who I'm like, just ever since we knew he was coming to Baylor, I was excited. I love seeing how these Alabama guys do in different systems just because Alabama usually produces really good wide receivers. So I'm excited for him to come along. I just think he'll be another really good weapon that they could lean on. And my second guy, who was a little hard for me to admit, just being a Michigan fan. The Ohio State guy. I got to go with Calvin Simpson Hunt. Yeah, I just think the change that needs to happen in the cornerbacks room, I think he's a great addition to that. And I think we talked about the leadership and how that's important in transfers. I think he's exactly that. He's a guy who has the leadership experience. I think he can be a really good voice in that room. And I think we're going to see a totally different quarterbacks room with him.
Yeah, that is a huge part of this. And Calvin Simpson Hunt is one of those names to circle, especially of like, he hasn't seen a lot of the field as a defensive player. He was obviously within a really good program that just won the national championship, and he's going to have a ring for it and all that. Like, how does that kind of turn over? I think that's, and Kobe Prentice was my original pick. I've got backups, so you're okay. I'll allow that. Here's another one. It's like, we saw it early in his career at Alabama. He was getting snaps as a true freshman. That's gone down the last couple of years, but he's still a starting receiver a lot of the time at Alabama. At worst, rotational receiver. He was not buried on the bench for Nick Saban's Alabama. Like that is a pretty big deal. They didn't need a ton at that position, but they needed to solidify some depth there. Kobe Prentice could be a huge one. I'll tell you the guy who was my pick all off season. But now it's become a little muddy, and I've talked about it on the show the last week. Devin Turner, the safety from Northwestern, I was really excited about. And now, not that I'm not excited about it, but now he's clearly had some surgery. He's got an injury that he sustained at the Baylor Blitz. We don't know how he factors in this year. We've not heard any update from Dave Aranda. They went out and got a safety in the last couple of days of May, which is not a great sign for the Devin Turner injury. But here's a guy who was an all Big Ten honorable mention last year with a year of eligibility left. He's a Texas kid, but stood out for a Northwestern team. And all his numbers and his PFF grades jumped dramatically from 23 to 24. And safety was a position that they needed some shoring up. I was really excited about Devin Turner. I'm not going to pick him now because I don't know what's going on. So I am going to shift to Travion Barnes, the linebacker from Florida International. Comes in as his conference defensive player of the year last year. Just got a lot of Keaton Thomas written all over him. And you know this from doing the show with me. I really like Keaton Thomas. I loved how he came in right away and was a starter and was an all Big 12 performer. I think Travion Barnes could be that way with Keaton Thomas playing alongside the way Keaton Thomas had Matt Jones. So I'm excited about this. I think most of our picks, honestly, all the guys I was thinking of outside of Kobe Prentice come on the defensive side.
Yeah, which is the area we needed to see the most growth from anyways. Yeah. So it's hard not to be excited about that.
And definitely the side that you can find some plug and play starters. And I think Dave Aranda did that last year. And, you know, we've been critical of Dave's handling of the defensive side of the football last year. Just, it needs to be better. It needs to be a better unit. And certainly they have made that a priority in the transfer portal, which is now a top 20 class. Put some respect on their name, man. I only see one other Big 12 team in the top 20 here, and they haven't been ranked this decade. So here's Baylor, you know, being a ranked team some of this decade and could be going into this season and doing it in the portal, doing it in the high school recruiting rankings as well. Let us know who you guys are most excited for to see from the portal to the Baylor Bears this year. Let us know in the comment section below. And then be sure to like and subscribe if you think that Baylor has a top 20 transfer portal class. Good news for you. You're liking and subscribing, getting involved in the comment section. When we come back on Locked On Baylor, we'll talk about what team in this conference thinks they're going to be the next college football dynasty and whether it might actually be another team in the Big 12 that could be laying claim to that. That is coming up next on Locked On Baylor. But first, today's episode of Locked On Baylor is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. You guys know them. You love them. I know them. I love them. Also, the NBA playoffs are in full swing. Don't know if you know that. We're on to the finals. Every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and the can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action than right now. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and as it's going on. Player props, performance trends, same-game parlays. Fans have never had this many ways to play smart and to win big. And look, you're there. You're not loving your bets from before, but you're seeing like, I got a hunch here. I know someone's getting hot. Put your money where your mouth is, man. You got to read on who's heating up. Why not back it up with the same game parlay? And if you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you're going to get $200 in bonus bets. So make every moment. Let me say that again. I don't know if you heard that. First $5 bet that wins, you get $200 in bonus bets. Free money. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Bringing it back on Locked On Baylor on this Wicker Wednesday. Cam Stuart, Sydney Wicker of KCEN Channel 6. Guys, of course, be sure to like, subscribe. We're on the path towards 4,000 subscribers, and we're getting pretty close to that. We need your help there. And find us wherever you find your podcast as well. Sydney, there was some big-time comments from Kenny Dillingham, head coach of the Arizona State Sun Devils, over the last week. Someone we've talked about on the show. He's actually doing a really good job of keeping up that momentum of a college football playoff appearance and turning it into tangible results, at least in the recruiting side of things. But here's what Kenny had to say this week, per Pete Nakus. Quote, you have Clemson from this last cycle from 2010 to 2020. They just showed up. People think they've been around forever. You have Oregon from 2000 to 2010. There hasn't been a team in this era in the 2020s, a new dynasty, so to speak, a new blue blood. The lifestyle that you have in Arizona, you can create some staff consistency, and then we're in a league where we can continually compete to win. So here is Kenny Dillingham after one playoff appearance and a Big 12 conference championship, worst to first from preseason rankings to postseason rankings, thinking Arizona State can become a blue blood of the 2020s, a la Oregon and then Clemson. What say you, Sydney Wicker? Does this Arizona State team under Kenny Dillingham have the opportunity to do that?
Opportunity. I mean, who doesn't?
That's a good point. That's a good point, which is worth noting. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. It's so tough. Like, yes, they had a great turnaround. Yes, they made the college football playoffs last year. Were they fun to watch? Of course. Did they do a lot of good things for the Big 12? I think so. But do I consider them a dynasty right now? Are they a team that I'm going to remember 10 years from now and be like, oh, yeah, remember that Arizona State team? I don't know if I can say that just yet. Like, I don't know if enough has been done. One good turnaround on a season, I don't know we can be calling Arizona State the next Clemson.
It is a reach, right? And like he says, Clemson came out of nowhere. It's not like Clemson was terrible, okay? Like Clemson was there. Clemson was a good college football program in the early years of Dabo, kind of that late 2000s, early 2010s. Yeah, they suddenly took it to another level midway through the 2010s. I don't think anybody can argue with that. But that took a while. That had a lot of pumping before those Pistons really started firing there. And it does beg the question, because I've heard this a few times the last couple of years. Like, why couldn't any team from the Big 12 be that? Like, Clemson with a great assist towards their dynasty, the 2 and 3 years, was the fact that they played in the ACC, and they still do. Like, that is a factor. Clemson could waltz into any football season and be one of the top 2 contenders in the ACC. It's like what everybody thought Texas used to be in this conference for the last 10 years. So we look at the conference in the Big 12, firmly the 3rd best conference in America, but comfortably ahead of 4th, right? And it's wide open every year. So then the next question is, Sydney, could pretty much any team in this conference suddenly step up and do that if they have the right coach?
Yeah, I would argue that any team could. I'm not going to say all of them can, because I don't think all of them can. Yeah. But yeah, I mean,
we don't need to pick names, but yeah.
Yeah, we can leave a few out there. But, I think he brings up a really good point of, like, did I think of Clemson previous to the last 10 years? Not really. I can't really remember. I mean, gosh, I was so young between 2000 and 2010. Yeah. But I mean, like, do I remember like talking about Clemson? Not really. It really was this surge as of recent. And, when you look at all of the teams in the Big 12 that could have that, I think Baylor probably has been one of the most that's been on track to be that compared to Arizona State. I mean, if they can start being consistent and having really good seasons and turn the record that you had last season to maybe having 2 more wins on your record this season, then I think that's more speaking to a team that you'll remember more. If I think of the last couple of years and the teams that I've thought about and the teams I've covered, Baylor is a team that comes to mind. And that was before I lived in Texas and covered Baylor. I remember them beating Ole Miss. I remember that season. I remember covering Ole Miss and being on those sidelines that season. So any team could really emerge as the next Clemson, if you want to say. But the Big 12, I think, has so much more complexity to it than the ACC.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, you talk about those programs coming out of nowhere. I don't think anyone was expecting it to be Clemson and not Miami, or Oregon and not Nebraska. And, the kind of waxing and waning of these blue blood programs. But I like that you bring up Baylor here, because this is Locked On Baylor, and that's where we're going next. Because when UT and OU announced they were leaving this conference, it was kind of danger zone of like, okay, is this conference going to exist? What, like, we were absolutely in that. Like, is Baylor going to be allowed in the Pac-12? What's going to happen here? But then quickly, when it looked like they were going to be stable, the question then became, who are the superpowers going to be? Right? Like Oklahoma State, good coach, good tradition, right? That kind of thing. TCU still had Patterson, or had just left Patterson. I think this was right at the beginning of Sonny Dykes. Like, they've been pretty steady over the years. Can they be that next team? Baylor has just as good, if not a better resume than anybody over the last dozen years in this conference. Have they had some down years? Oh boy, you know it. All right. Trust me, I've been through it. But in the last dozen years, they have won the Big 12 3 times. That's more than anyone that's still in the conference. They went to the conference championship game, which I'll put in quotations, because 2 of them weren't games, with 3 different head coaches. They've gone to 4 different BCS bowl games in that time. Then they've had a couple of top 5 rankings to finish the season. That is not to be just swept away, because as good as TCU has been, they've only done those things 1 time. Oklahoma State has not done that. Kansas State has done a Big 12 championship, not a BCS bowl victory. So we can go up and down the list, but this is wide open. And if Dave Aranda is that guy who does have a Big 12 championship under his belt and does have a Sugar Bowl and does compete in the best high school football state in America, is a good transfer portal destination, and plays in a wide open conference that they've been pretty successful in, why can't Baylor be that next one? Why does it have to be last year's champion? You see what I mean? Like, there is a path for Baylor. I'm not saying they're the next Clemson, but there is a better path for Baylor than most other schools in this conference to be that team that we're talking about out of the Big 12 year in, year out. Am I crazy? Am I biased?
No, I agree with that.
Thank you.
The path is there. Thanks, Cam. Appreciate the invite back. Say one good thing about Baylor, gets an invite back.
You got it. You know how to play the game. Yeah.
Limits my SEC talk. We're here.
But like, serious, like, I am biased, and Baylor had that opportunity after 2021 and they did not take it. Let's be clear. They did not take that. They absolutely could have. But with the kind of succession plan they have at quarterback right now, how good they look this year, and there is still the question on Dave Aranda being the right guy. I think we feel a lot better about it this year than we did last year. To me, we've seen the blueprint. We've seen Baylor do it. In the mid-2010s, they were right there. Youngsters might not remember this, but Baylor was in the national championship discussion in those couple of years. So we've seen it. It can happen. Is it rare? Of course. But Baylor can be that. I think I'm not crazy in saying that.
I don't think you're too crazy, Cam. I'm not going to say you're not crazy.
Well, that's because you know me. Yeah. That's because there's definitely some craziness there. But then again, there's also, I don't think there's anything holding back Arizona State from doing it. The more reason I bring this up is just that we've heard this before. Baylor said this, TCU said this, Oklahoma State said this, Kansas State said this, Colorado has said this. You know what I mean? There's absolutely that opportunity. The Big 12 is wide open enough, but also still sustainable enough, still good enough that you can't, much like the ACC was and is, has been for a long time, that you can get a Clemson out of this conference. I just don't know if I'm going to nail it down to Arizona State.
No,
And I
not
think,
yet. You can't have one run in the college football playoffs and call yourselves the next Clemson. I'm sorry. That's not how it works.
and I think the biggest part of it, Sydney, is it's got to be the right coach in place who isn't going to leave for a bigger job. I think that's the last kind of big point about this. And I don't know if Baylor's out of that woods. I think Dave Aranda, if he has a banger couple of years here, could leave for a bigger job. That was what was so key about Art Briles. He was like 60. He wasn't going to leave for another job. Gary Patterson turned down bigger jobs for years at TCU. But that, and Kenny is a young guy. If they have another good year, he is going to be the hottest coach on the market. So that is the next hurdle to get over. But what you can say about the Big 12 is at least we play on real football networks when we have the say for things. The CW, is it the worst thing in college football right now, or is that a little too dramatic? Let's talk about it next on Locked On Baylor. Sydney Wicker of KCEN Channel 6. We talked about this. I talked about this on the show last week. Baylor's second game of the season. Big matchup. SMU, Old Southwest Conference rivals. Okay, in-state, right up the road. SMU was in the playoff last year. Baylor has playoff ambitions this year. Pretty solid week 2 game. And as you know, we kind of get the good ones out of the way in week 1. Week 2 is usually the biggest dud of the season. That's a big matchup. You can catch it at 11 a.m. Central Time on the CW. The ACC, so we got to do something about the ACC, man. This is brutal. So I think it's dumb, but you're a little bit more level-headed than me. I want your take on this. And no, it's not because you're a woman, but because I've probably watched more One Tree Hill than you. And that's on the CW.
I don't know. I have watched a lot of One Tree Hill.
I've watched all of it.
I have watched it all too. Have you rewatched?
The middle, most. I've rewatched most of it, so maybe
I have not done a rewatch yet.
You know what? When we get a slow Wednesday in like July, I think we'll just One Tree Hill trivia.
Oh my God, love! I went to Wilmington when I was in where they filmed the whole show.
Been there too.
When I was there for March Madness, it was perfect.
That's classic. See the river court and everything.
Saw it all.
Yep. Been there. It's great. Anyway, One Tree Hill would literally be the pregame show to that SMU Baylor game.
It should be.
I mean, I would hope so. State championship, season 4, my favorite episode. But seriously, when it comes to a big matchup like this, does that kind of frustrate you that this should be a marquee game in week 2 and it's put on the CW at 11 a.m.?
It's so hard because just like trying to understand like how TV works and like they're doing all these different things, like, but yeah, it's frustrating. Like when you like, it's frustrating to me sometimes when games are on ESPN Plus or Peacock. I don't want to watch an 8:00 kickoff on Peacock, and I have bought a Peacock subscription for 1 month just to watch some football games, which is ridiculous. So does it work? Yeah. Is it annoying? Absolutely. So, but yeah, you bring it up. How many good week 2 matchups are there? Usually not a lot. The first 4 weeks are usually like who's playing this week? Like there's just not.
Yeah, you get like a marquee week 1. Yeah. And then you get the early conference games. You get a Florida, Tennessee in mid to late September. But in between's tough.
It's so tough. And really, like, that's the network that we're choosing. Come on, guys. Like, is there really something better on Fox Sports that week or on ESPN? Like, I need to see it. Even on NBC or ABC, like the OGs, CBS. Like, what are we doing?
I don't know what we're doing there. I know the ACC is on hard times, but they've still got an ESPN deal. Like, I don't know how that game doesn't end up on ESPN and we're stuck with the CW. And I was being dramatic a bit in the tease, but that is bad for college football. Like, again, this is a big time game. And instead, ESPN2, you'll get James Madison at Louisville on that Friday night. And that's building up to a day of just not good football. I'm looking at the schedule here. You got Iowa State. We love that. That's Fox, 11 a.m., same time slot. Virginia at NC State. That's your ESPN2 ACC game and the same time slot. UVA and NC State. Oof. Oof. How about Illinois at Duke? Somehow a better matchup. Illinois' got a decent team. Illinois at Duke, 11 a.m. Central Time. Those are games that are going on national networks. Even ESPNU has Central Michigan at Pitt. How did we get stuck on the CW network? How does that make any sense? It's just bad.
Yeah.
It's just bad for college football. It's a big game. It should be treated as such.
It is. And
I know
it's
they're
hard
not brands, but you know what I mean. Sorry.
Yeah, and like the CW does do a lot of like March Madness games and things like that. So you have to just think like they're just trying to expand their college football or college sports coverage, I guess. I don't know. But right now, it just kind of stings and it does feel like a slap in the face. I mean, at least like let's do a 3:00 game or 2 or whatever.
Well, yeah, I mean at that point, so you're playing at 11. Like let's do the elephant in the room here. September 6th in Dallas, Highland Park, Texas at 11 a.m. It's going to be about 105 degrees.
Yeah.
Like, why aren't we bumping this to a night game? Like, why aren't we bumping North Carolina A&T versus UCF on the schedule? Why aren't we bumping that? Or Army versus Kansas State at 6:00 on ESPN. You think two ranked teams, which is what Baylor and SMU are going to be, is a little bit better of a matchup than Army versus Kansas State? I'm sorry. Or Boston College at Michigan State. Like, can we just use some better judgment here? Anyway.
Cam is calming down.
Yeah, I just needed to get that out. I'm just so bugged by the CW. But again, if it's Country Hill beforehand, all right, you've got me.
You make the exception. Yeah.
Anyway, let me know what you guys think. Is the CW the worst thing in college football? Let me know in the comment section below. Is this the best game in week 2? Because it's right up there. I don't know if these teams are going to be ranked. Sorry to break it to you, but you do have Michigan, Oklahoma at 6:30 on ABC. Mm-hmm. That's an ABC game. We're not like, I'm not saying we need to push that game out. We just need to be, ESPN2's got Arizona State at Mississippi State, which I think are the next two Clemsons, the next two great college football dynasties, squaring off at 6:30. Anyway, subscribe, find us on YouTube, find us wherever you find your podcasts. We're down to 3 days a week for a couple weeks here, taking a little bit of that time while we can. So we will see you on Friday on the next episode of your favorite show. Thanks for making it your first listen today and every day. Locked on Baylor.